Hey, what's up, guys? That's Mount Rushmore behind me. I'm in South Dakota. And I wanted to talk today about how I'm really patriotic for an Asian American. And it often surprises people. So I wasn't always like that. In fact, I hated the United States when I was a kid. So I'm a US citizen. I was born here, but I grew up in the Bronx. Yeah, growing up in the Bronx was rough. There were very few Asians. Like the black guys would always be like, "Hey, yo, Bruce Lee, you in the wrong part of town, my man. Chinatown's down that way." you know. And if I tell them like, "Oh, I'm actually Japanese," they'd be like, "Yo, I don't give a f- you Nepalese, bro. Get out of here." And that was pretty hurtful. And even when I moved to Westchester, New York for high school, it was like preppy white kids. But even they would be like, "Hey, yo, Mr. Miyagi, teach me the crane kick." And if I played like Nintendo Street Fighter with them, they'd be like, "Yo, why are you cheating, bro? I know your dad made this game and gave you the cheat codes." Like I just couldn't avoid being stereotyped for being Asian. It just never ended. It was pervasive. Yeah, and growing up, like learning about history class, like it just wasn't very relatable or interesting to me. Like these weren't my ancestors; they were Europeans that came to the country, and my actual ancestors were like on the other side of the world on a different continent being ninjas and stuff, and we never learned about that. We just learned about the redcoats and the Civil War and all this stuff that my ancestors weren't around for. It's like I'm learning the history of a totally different people that are unrelated to me. And then we'd get to talking about World War II, and of course we talk about Pearl Harbor, and they'd show like a sad documentary about all the people who died, and the people were all like sniffling in the movie, and like I can feel them all like staring at the back of my head, like, "Oh, that dirty Jap. Look at his people. Look at look at that kamikaze pilot. Look at what he did to our people." And I could like feel their judgment. Like I'm not a kamikaze pilot. Like I was born in the United States. Like way, way after all that stuff happened. Like why do I have to deal with that? Yeah, I just felt very unwelcome. And I would tell my parents, like, why did we move here? Like it's just like we don't belong here. Things gradually changed as I got older because I was in a mostly white high school, and then I was in a pretty much black and Hispanic part of the Bronx. When I got to college, there were more Asian Americans. As much as I try not to be tribal, you can just kind of feel that they accepted me more. Obviously, everyone wants to have a sense of belonging. What's interesting is that even though in Asia there's so much inter-Asian political beef because of what Japan did during World War II. In the United States, it's kind of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's like they the Asians get along better because the majority race just sees them all as Asian anyways. So it's like you might as well stick together. The atrocities of the past in East in Asia, it feels a little more distant when you're in another country. It's interesting how that happens, right? But anyways, college was more fun. I felt a little more accepted. My first job out of college at Lockheed Martin, uh, even there, I couldn't really escape it. I was building ballistic missile defense software. They sent me out on this cool trip to Pearl Harbor, actually in Hawaii. It was actually a really fun month because I got to stay on Waikiki Beach on this nice hotel that like I could leave the little balcony door open and you could hear the waves splashing and stuff. That was a really awesome month because there was like a per diem, so I would eat at Duke's and eat like fresh seafood every day. Anyways, the point of the story is that I would drive to Pearl Harbor to install ballistic missile defense software and test it on the Navy ships there. I was really worried my first time there because when I was like getting my badge and everything, I was concerned that they would see my name and be like, "Who let this dirty Jap here?" and like throw tomatoes at me and stuff. And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm American, guys." But luckily, like, it'd been like 50 plus years, and they were over it. Um, so I didn't have to deal with that, but it was a concern, and those kind of concerns, you have to deal with that. Asian Americans are 5% of the country's population. My feelings towards the country slowly started to change once I moved into finance and I started making a ton of money. Of course, the story changes with money. Yeah, once I started moving up the ranks on Wall Street, I started feeling respect from white folks. I started to feel like, okay, this country isn't that bad. This is a good life. And at some point, I was interviewing people for my trade desk, and I would have these kids from Harvard, these like preppy kids from Harvard, sending me these groveling thank you letters, begging me for a job. And, I'd have these preppy Ivy League kids basically interning for me and, getting me coffee and stuff, and I just kind of felt like, wow, this country's not that bad actually. Someone born and raised in the United States might not understand the context of that, but I have relatives, I have cousins in Japan, and they're just as talented and smart as me, but they're stuck in these dead end salaryman jobs, wearing suits and getting squished in the subways in their suits, working like 80 hours a week while making the equivalent of like 60 grand a year. And I'm making like 10 times that in Wall Street. You know, the opportunity I got in this country to make a lot of money is just so much greater than in Japan. And I started to realize that once I became an adult. It made me very grateful for the country. I realized, like, for some people, just talking about money, it may seem kind of distasteful. Like, really, you love the country because of money? Well, yeah, frankly. I mean, people leave their native countries and move to countries they can't speak the language, and purely for money, for economic opportunity. All those immigrants from Korea and China and Chinatowns and Koreatowns across the United States, rooftop Koreans and whatnot, they came here for a better life. So, yes, it is about money. To live in a country that would give you the opportunity to make that much money and promote you and do their best to push a meritocratic culture, I have a lot of respect for a country with those values. Despite the country still being mostly white, they're very open-minded about letting other races move up the ranks. The CEOs of a lot of the major companies like Satya Nadella, Sundar Jensen Huang. These guys are CEOs of the most powerful companies in the United States. Well, you might expect that. That is not the norm in other countries. You know, China is an ethnostate. If someone says they're Chinese, it's not just a nationality, it's also a race. So in the United States, you can be Chinese American, but in China, you can't be American Chinese. And give that some thought. You know, if you were born in China as some white dude, but you're a Chinese citizen, and your name is Wang Johnson, you you're never going to be Chinese, because Chinese is a race as well as a nation. And the same with Japan. Japan's an ethnostate too, and a lot of countries are like that. In Japan, there are bars that are Japanese only, and they straight up say on the door, no gaijin allowed. If you complain about that as a white person, they'll just laugh you out of the country. I mean, they don't care. You know, they'll just be like, get out of the country, bro. This is our country. And that's fair. You know, they were there first, and they were there for 2,000 plus years. But the United States does their best to not have that attitude, and I actually really appreciate that. Like in the United States, yeah, you can climb to be the CEO of one of these top companies. You know, Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, you know, they prove that this is true, right? You think some white guy has a chance to be the CEO of TikTok or ByteDance? No, Senator. Of course not. I'm Singaporean, Senator. No, I mean, like, yeah, you're Singaporean Chinese. That's what people don't get. If you were Singaporean white, you would have no chance of being the CEO of TikTok. That's just the way it is. I really respect the values of a country that'll let you rise up to be the CEO of a company. So there's a saying, Africa is for Africans, Asia is for Asians, but white countries are for everyone. And that tends to be true, right? White people get their farms stolen and kicked out of Africa with the justification that, you know, this is Africa. It's for Africans. Get out of here. And the same with Asian countries, right? Like the example I gave you about like the izakaya bar for Japanese only. And it's culturally understood. It's like, yeah, of course, you know, we're Japanese. This is our country. But yeah, it's only white countries where they make this effort to be inclusive for every race. They proved that it wasn't just words. They proved it when they paid me. So yeah, I mean the amount of fun I've had with the money I've made is absurd. I mean, I can't get into it on a YouTube video, but yeah, I mean the amount of money I've spent in the US from some of the fat bonuses I've gotten, yeah, I owe this country a lot. Like I realized, all right, this country is awesome. I owe my loyalty to this country. This is an awesome country. While my cousins in Japan are just struggling to get by, you know, working like 100 hours a week in their dead end office jobs, just miserable salarymen. I really owe a lot to this country. I respect this country. I respect values like that. And if I have kids, I would want them to grow up in a country with these kind of values. And so, yeah, I'm quite patriotic about this country, and I want to see it succeed. And if we ever have like a world war or something, I would probably volunteer. Not just obviously not as like some infantryman because I'm a nerd, but maybe in like the cryptography department or something. Do some code cracking or just something nerdy like in the IT department or something. Uh, but yeah, I would probably try to help defend the country and try to help defend the country's values because I feel like it's needed in the world. Anyways, I hope you got something out of that.